Greetings, brave screen surfer. Where are you watching from? Some sleepy village? Or a roaring metropolis? Reveal your coordinates in the comments and rally your friends and family to check this out too. Let's get into it. Early summer. From the threshold of the kitchen, Melanie leaned partway out and called over her shoulder, "Rachel, can you get that?" "My hands are tied in here." Her teenage daughter let out a loud groan from where she lay sprawled on the couch, yanking her earbuds free with dramatic annoyance. With deliberate slowness, Rachel shuffled to the front door. When she opened it, she found a well-groomed man in a suit standing next to a uniformed police officer. Can I help you?" she asked uncertainly. The suited man gave her a courteous nod. "Good evening. Is Jonas Whitaker home?" "One moment." Rachel spun back toward the house, cupping her hands around her mouth. "Dad, there are cops here!" Jonas Whitaker arrived in seconds, still wearing a kitchen apron, drying his damp fingers on a dish towel. "What did you say?" "The police," Rachel grinned, jabbing her thumb toward the door. "Looks like you're busted." "Shoo, go give your mom a hand," Jonas replied, giving her a light tap as she trotted off with a laugh. He faced the visitors. "Hi, I'm Jonas Whitaker. What can I do for you?" The man reached into his coat and displayed a badge. "Detective Scanlon, and this is Officer Pellegrino. Mind if we come in?" "Sure, yeah, come on inside. Sorry about the chaos. We're in prep mode for my daughter's wedding tomorrow. Turns out the caterer didn't get the memo about some exotic kale recipe from the Pacific Islands, and now it's all hands on deck." Jonas exhaled in mock despair. "Take it from me. Avoid daughters. If you can't, at least don't let them get married. You'll go broke and lose your mind." A voice rang out cheerfully from another room. "I heard that." Jonas winced. "And now I'm dead." He motioned toward the living room. "So, what's going on?" Detective Scanlon cleared his throat. "Sorry to drop in during such a busy time. Were you previously married to a woman named Annalise Whitaker?" Jonas froze. The color left his face. The dish towel slipped silently to the floor. He stared at them, unmoving. "Jonas?" Melanie's voice called gently from behind. She entered from the kitchen, an attractive woman in her 40s, blonde and aproned, hands still dripping. She smiled as she approached. "Hi, I'm Melanie," she said, extending a hand, then pulled back. "Wait, unless you want papaya juice all over you." She bent to grab the fallen towel and wiped her hands. That's when she saw Jonas's blank stare. "Honey, what is it?" The officer turned toward her. "Are you Mrs. Whitaker?" "Yes, I am." "We've received new information concerning Mr. Whitaker's former wife, Annalise." Melanie's expression dimmed. Oh no." She turned toward her husband. Detective Scanlon kept his voice steady. "We don't know whether this will come as good news or bad, but Annalise Whitaker has been found alive. She's in Washington State. The Seattle police confirmed her identity using fingerprint records. She goes by Christina Monroe now and is currently in custody for her involvement in the death of her husband there. Annalise was declared missing back in 1987. For a long moment, no one said anything. Time seemed to stop in the stillness of the hall. Jonas's eyes welled with tears, though none fell. Melanie swallowed hard before murmuring, "Thank you. We don't even know how to respond. It's overwhelming." "We completely understand," said Scanlon softly. "It's a case that's been cold for over 20 years. We had to pull the old files from storage. We'll share anything new we get from Seattle." Melanie gave a quiet nod. "Please do. We'd like to be kept informed." With a final nod, the officers slipped out, closing the door behind them. The evening darkness swallowed their exit. Jonas remained rooted to the spot. Melanie stepped close and wrapped her arms around him. She rested her head against his shoulder as a single tear traced down his face, landing in her hair. She began to cry too. They stood there, motionless, two statues locked in sorrow and disbelief. A voice from the kitchen shattered the quiet. "Mom, something's boiling over!" Melanie lifted her head and looked at Jonas. "Go lie down upstairs," she whispered. "Rachel and I can handle things here. We'll talk in a bit, all right?" Without a word, Jonas turned and climbed the stairs. The door to the bedroom closed softly behind him. Alone in the hall, Melanie stood frozen. Then she whispered to the empty space, "Why now? Dear God, why now? Why was this happening now of all times? Tomorrow was meant to be a day of celebration, yet everything had splintered into sorrow. Please, God, take care of Jonas." Melanie blotted her tear-streaked face with a napkin she'd grabbed off the counter, crumpled and damp. She turned back to the stove, just in time to keep the saucepan from bubbling over. Only after another hour of coaxing dinner together did she allow herself to leave the kitchen and climb the stairs. The bedroom lay still and dim. As she eased the door open, a sliver of hallway light spilled across the room, casting a soft beam over Jonas. He was seated stiffly in the familiar old chair by the window, apron still knotted at his waist, his head bowed low, hands loosely clasped in his lap. Melanie stepped quietly across the floor, then sank onto her knees before him. She leaned in close, searching his face for some flicker of emotion, but his eyes were lost to the shadows. Her hands found his arms, resting there gently, counting the slow rhythm of his breath. He was breathing. That was something. No words passed between them. The silence lingered, dense and unmoving, stretching so long that the minutes blurred together. At last, Melanie's voice came in a hushed tremble. "Jonas, please look at me." She paused. "Just look at me, sweetheart." He tilted his head just enough to meet her gaze in the low light. Her voice, tender but unshaken, clung to the moment like a lifeline. "I know this is tearing you apart. I can't grasp the full weight of it, but I feel every bit of your pain. And I need you to know. I'm here. Always. Whatever comes, we'll walk through it together." Maybe she imagined it, but something about his expression shifted. The faintest curl of a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. It was enough to ignite a fragile hope in her chest. "Jonas," she said, voice steadier now, "tomorrow is everything. It's her big day. We can't let this grief take that from her. We hold it together until the vows are spoken. After that, we face the rest. Together. I promise." He kept his eyes on hers, willing the tide of anguish to retreat to some quiet place inside him. Today, it was their daughter's joy that mattered. The sorrow could wait. It wouldn't be faced alone. Melanie had promised. "I love you," Jonas said at last, voice low but sure. He let one hand slide from hers, brushing the back of his fingers gently along her cheek. "Come on, let's try to get some sleep. Tomorrow will be long. She deserves nothing but smiles, at least until she finds some last-minute disaster to worry about." 24 years ago, May. Jonas sat on the floor, legs crossed, with little Bianca nestled against his chest, laughing at the cartoon antics on their shiny new VCR. Every time Chip and Dale zipped across the screen, she burst into giggles, sometimes trying to mimic their squeaky voices, delighting in her own attempts. Jonas soaked in every laugh, every sound. This was joy in its purest form. Just above them, Julian was sprawled across the couch, eyes locked on his latest electronic obsession, a handheld Space Invaders game. The aliens might as well have been real for all the attention he paid to the world around him. Tuesdays and Thursdays were Jonas's favorite. Those were his nights with the kids, early pickups from the babysitter, a little more time before the bedtime routines began. Annalise worked late twice a week, and that meant dinner was his domain. He didn't mind. Meals were usually quick and chaotic. Hot dogs, sloppy joes, anything easy and fun. Tonight's delicacy was macaroni and cheese from a box. A warm voice drifted in from the hallway. "Did you save any for me?" "Mommy!" Bianca squealed, arms outstretched toward Annalise. With a grin, Annalise swept into the room, kissed Jonas on the head, and scooped up their daughter, spinning her in a joyful circle. Julian didn't look up. The pixelated battle for Earth demanded full focus. Jonas groaned theatrically as he stood, joints stiff, and leaned toward Annalise for a kiss, but Bianca's squirming turned it into a near miss. "How was your day?" he asked. Annalise let out a tired breath. "Same as always. Another estate, another client who didn't live to see the paperwork." She tilted her head. "You?" Jonas grinned. "Best day of my week. Just got even better now." He wrapped his arms around her from behind and kissed her neck. "Come on, sit down. I saved you a plate. I'll heat it up." Once everything was on the table, Annalise raised an eyebrow at the meal. "Mac and cheese with a glass of wine. What's the occasion?" Jonas laughed. "Thought you could use something nice. Boxed wine felt a little too depressing, so I opened a bottle." "Bold move, especially for a Tuesday," she said, sipping. "Trying to seduce me over powdered cheese?" Jonas waggled his eyebrows. "Is it working?" "Bring that bottle over," Jonas murmured, his voice low. "Don't stop pouring." "Sure thing," Annalise replied, gently tilting the wine to fill his glass. Jonas couldn't take his eyes off her as she ate. Each motion fascinated him, the way she moved her fork, the way an absent smile danced across her lips mid-bite. He was completely enchanted. Just looking at her made his chest tighten. When her fingers brushed his arm, electricity ran through him. Even the faint trace of her perfume left him unsteady. Annalise overwhelmed him in every way. To Jonas, she was flawless. She wasn't only his wife, she was his entire world. Everything else faded into nothing when she was nearby. Later that night, after settling their children into bed, Jonas clung to the rare peace they shared, curled together on the couch, finishing their wine in hushed tones. "When they're asleep like this," he whispered into her hair, "why don't we head upstairs and start trying for baby number 3? Annalise chuckled quietly and shook her head. "Jonas, we've got our hands full as it is. The 2 we have need us steady and present. Adding another would push us over the edge." She kissed him gently. "Come to bed. Hold me. Let's make love, without thinking about babies." Jonas exhaled, smiling despite himself. "I know, it's just, when I'm on the floor with them, playing, I think, this is the best thing I've ever done. And if 2 are this amazing, wouldn't 3 or 4 be even more incredible?" He laughed under his breath. "I want you there with me, chasing them around. Then you'd understand. I've never been happier, except maybe when we made them." "I'm exhausted," Annalise murmured, sinking against him and pulling him closer. "No more talking. Just hold me like this is the last night on Earth, like time's stopped and we're all that's left." Jonas kissed the top of her head. "I love you, Annalise Whitaker." May 20th, 1987, Wednesday. Work was pure chaos, more than Jonas was used to, even on his busiest days. One co-worker was out sick, another was away at a training seminar, and one of the office assistants kept breaking down in tears every half hour over a breakup. The result? Jonas found himself covering 3 jobs at once, putting out fires non-stop without so much as a snack break. By mid-afternoon, the shrill ring of his desk phone felt almost like a gift. His first chance all day to stop moving and have a real conversation. "Jonas speaking, what can I do for you?" "Hi, Mr. Whitaker, it's Tracy. I've been trying to get hold of your wife. I need to know when she's coming to pick up Julian and Bianca. I haven't heard from her." "She's usually there at 3, Jonas said, glancing at the clock. "It's already 4, Tracy replied, her voice edged with concern. "I've got a meeting across town at 5:30 and I need to leave soon." "I'll give her a call and check in. If I can't reach her, I'll come get them myself." Jonas ended the call and immediately dialed Annalise's office. "M&P Estate Liquidations," a woman answered. "Barbara Ross speaking." "Hey Barb, it's Jonas. Is Annalise around?" There was a short pause. "I'm not sure. I haven't seen her today. Hang on, I'll ask around." He waited, listening to muffled voices and footsteps in the background. Barbara came back on the line, sounding uneasy. "She's not here, Jonas. We thought she was out meeting with a client doing paperwork or something, but Harry just got back and said she never showed up. No one's seen her all day." She hesitated. "Her car's in the lot, though. Do you want me to check anything?" "No, that's all right," Jonas said quietly. I'll go pick up the kids. If she turns up, just tell her I have them and to call me. Relief at leaving the chaos of work mixed with a growing sense of dread. Annalise was never late when it came to picking up the kids. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 3 o'clock sharp, like clockwork. But not today. After getting the children home and setting them in front of the television, Jonas tried Annalise's office again. No updates. Still no sign of her. He called her best friend, Linda. Nothing. He called his mother, hoping maybe she'd heard something. She hadn't. He ran through every sitter they knew, finally getting a hold of a teenage neighbor who could come watch the kids. Once they were taken care of, Jonas drove straight to Annalise's office. Her car was still parked out front. He looked through the windows, nothing out of place, a couple of fast food bags on the seat, her coat and gloves tossed in the back. The doors were locked. Inside, he questioned the staff again, pressing for any clue. But nobody had seen her. No one had any idea where she was. Jonas's concern hardened into something colder, more primal. Fear. This wasn't like Annalise. Not even a little. She always made sure to tell him where she was going, and if she expected to be late, he knew in advance. She was never behind schedule when it came to picking up the kids. After leaving Annalise's office that evening, he drove around with no real direction, bouncing between stores and eateries she frequented. She was nowhere to be found. When he eventually got back home and paid the sitter, the reality hit him hard. It was late, frighteningly late, and no one had eaten dinner yet. He threw together a quick meal, fish sticks and fries, for the kids and sat them at the table, something fast to keep their stomachs full. Meanwhile, he kept calling everyone he could think of. When he phoned his mother a second time, she insisted on coming over, just to help with the children. Jonas was unraveling. He hadn't seen his wife since that morning when she'd kissed him goodbye. He ran through every possibility in his head. There hadn't been a fight, no tension, nothing unusual. There wasn't a single clue pointing to why she wouldn't come home. Her absence gnawed at him, far more than anything else. When his mother arrived, she didn't waste a moment taking over. She cleaned up the kitchen, got the kids ready for bed, read them a short story, and came back downstairs to find Jonas sitting on the couch, hands covering his face. Her tone was gentle but pressing when she asked, "Did you talk to anyone?" "They wouldn't file anything," he replied, barely lifting his head. "Said it doesn't qualify. Told me to check hospitals and jails myself, see if she turns up somewhere." His mother blinked, stunned. "They didn't actually say that." "They did. And worse," Jonas said, jaw tightening. "Said they don't go chasing after missing adults, that she has the right to leave, go wherever she wants, be with whoever she chooses, like I don't even get a say." His fists clenched. "Feels like they won't care until she ends up dead." Quietly, his mother asked, "So what are you going to do now?" "I already called every hospital in the area. Nothing. Talked to every county police station nearby. No sign of her. I even called her boss again. Now she's starting to panic too. Annalise is just gone. It's like she disappeared off the face of the earth." "Jonas," his mother said with a soft warning, "mind how you speak." "I'm sorry, Mom. It's just..." His voice broke. "Every time a car pulls up, every time a door slams, I think it's her. I check the window constantly. But it's never her. It's never anything. I can't stand this," he said. "I need to do something, but I don't even know where to begin." She exhaled deeply. "I wish I had an answer for you, but when she does come home, I'm going to have a few strong words for her, for putting you through this. And don't think for a second you're going to talk me out of it." That almost brought a smile to his face. Long before the sun was up, Jonas was back in his car, driving toward Annalise's workplace. He hadn't slept at all, and the man staring back at him in the rearview mirror looked just as drained as he felt. He'd splashed cold water on his face before leaving, hoping it might erase the tear-streaked signs of the night. He pulled into the parking lot and parked next to Annalise's car. Using the spare key, he unlocked it and started searching. Glove compartment, under the seats, behind the visors, even inside the ashtray. Nothing gave him a clue. The trunk was just as ordinary. Nothing seemed disturbed or unusual. Defeated, he collapsed into the driver's seat and turned on the engine. Annalise's favorite station came on automatically. The gas tank was nearly full. The whole car seemed untouched, routine, too routine. He pounded the steering wheel with his fist and let loose a torrent of curses before hanging his head in quiet despair. "Jonas, is that you?" He looked up. It was Barb, Annalise's supervisor, standing by the car, her face tense with concern. "She didn't come home last night?" she asked gently. Jonas just shook his head. Words wouldn't come. "Did you contact the police?" "They said they can't do anything," he murmured. Her expression hardened. "Leave it to me." She turned and marched inside without another word. Jonas remained where he was, unmoving, until about 10 minutes later, a patrol car pulled into the lot. Barb re-emerged with a police officer walking beside her. She approached Jonas and laid a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Jonas, this is my nephew, Officer Ted Parker," she introduced. "He's going to help however he can. At the very least, he'll get a formal report started. Isn't that right, Ted?" "Yes, ma'am," the young officer nodded. "I'll take care of it. You go on home. We'll come by when we've finished here." Unlike the disinterested voice on the phone from earlier, Ted seemed genuinely committed. He listened carefully, asking questions, some of which seemed off-topic or odd, but Jonas answered them all anyway. Then Ted conducted his own search of the car, inspecting places Jonas hadn't thought to check. The narrow spaces between the seats, the first aid kit, even under the spare tire in the trunk. But just like before, there was nothing. Not a trace, not a lead. Much like Jonas's efforts, the search yielded nothing. The officer advised that they return the vehicle home, ensure it was locked, and avoid tampering with anything inside. It might need to be revisited later for evidence. Once the lot had emptied out, the two men headed back to the building. Barb guided them to Annalise's desk and pointed out the work she'd been doing. The area was open and chaotic, filled with boxes packed to the brim with files, photographs, paperwork, and assorted materials linked to the probate case she'd been managing. Barb powered on Annalise's computer and assisted the young officer in navigating the files. But there was nothing out of the ordinary. No leads, no unusual files, no sign of trouble. The officer told Barb to lock down the workstation and, if possible, secure the rest of the office. He promised that once the missing persons report was officially filed, more officers would return to examine everything in depth. Though he tried to offer Jonas some reassurance, the words barely scratched the surface of Jonas's growing panic. By the time the officer departed, Jonas was visibly shaking. He was just as lost and bewildered as he had been the night before. Annalise had vanished without a trace, and he felt utterly powerless. Eventually, he chose to head home, planning to retrieve Annalise's car later. But instead of going straight there, he drove aimlessly, winding through street after street without any real direction. He drove in endless loops around the city, pulling into places Annalise would never have gone, following no route, simply allowing the car to choose where it would take him. When he finally made it back home, the red light on the answering machine was blinking. His pulse quickened as he rewound the tape and hit play, hoping desperately that he'd hear Annalise's voice. But it wasn't her. It was his secretary, checking in to ask why he hadn't shown up for work. Amid the chaos and fear of the past day, Jonas had completely neglected to notify anyone at the office. He quickly phoned his boss and explained the situation. His employer, kind and understanding, urged him to take all the time he needed. Jonas knew how fortunate he was to work for someone so compassionate. His mother had taken the kids to the park, leaving the house quiet and empty. Jonas sat alone at the kitchen table, a soda can sweating beside him, his mind spinning in every direction at once. Questions haunted him. What if she was lying somewhere, hurt and unable to call for help? What if she was confused and wandering the streets, not remembering who she was? What if someone had taken her? What if? What if? What if? A flood of scenarios, some outrageous, others terrifyingly plausible, swarmed his thoughts. One notion briefly crossed his mind. Had she run away with another man? But he rejected it instantly. That wasn't Annalise. The idea stung, so outlandish that it physically hurt. The stress gave him a pounding headache. He set the phone down, folded his arms on the table, and rested his head. Exhaustion took over, and he slipped into a restless sleep. When he woke up, night had fallen, and the room was bathed in darkness. The silence pressed in like a weight. No cheerful chatter, no distant sound of children, no television hum, just a stillness so intense it felt tangible. The only glow came from a lamp in the living room. Jonas entered to find his mother quietly seated beside it, a magazine resting untouched on her lap. "Hey," he murmured, voice thick with sleep. "Hi," she answered gently. "How are you holding up?" "My neck's sore. Everything aches. Mostly, I just feel, well, you know." "I do," she replied softly. "The kids are staying at your sister's. They can stay as long as they need to. I've let everyone know what's going on. They're all worried about you. I even spoke to Pastor Benningfield. He said they'll be praying for both you and Annalise at Sunday's service. Jonas, you're not alone in this. People care. If you need anything, just ask. Help will come. I've moved into the spare bedroom, and I'll be here until we get through this. Go wash up, take a hot shower. I'll make dinner when you come back down." Jonas climbed a few steps toward the second floor before stopping. He turned slowly, walked back to his mother, and embraced her tightly. Just like he had as a boy, after tumbling off his bike and scraping his knee, he clung to her for comfort. Right now, he needed it more than ever. Monday, May 25th, 1987. Annalise was still gone. No trace. Jonas had spent the entire weekend, Saturday and Sunday, crisscrossing the city in search of her. Though gas was cheaper than during the crisis years, even at 95 cents a gallon, the constant driving was adding up. He spoke with anyone who might have known something, even total strangers on the street. Annalise had no close relatives left. Her father had died when she was a teen. Her mother passed away shortly after she and Jonas married. No siblings. The few cousins she had lived scattered across the country. Jonas dug out their old Christmas card list and called every number listed, but none had seen or heard from her. Barb helped him bring Annalise's car back home and spent much of Saturday morning by his side, doing what little she could. By late Sunday, his brothers and sisters came over with their families. They didn't have answers, but they brought comfort. The day wound down the way many family gatherings did, everyone in the backyard, eating pizza. The mood was somber, but food still needed to be eaten. Monday morning arrived, and Jonas didn't go to the office. He sat outside, staring blankly at the wooden fence, lost in thought. That's where his mother found him. "Jonas," she said quietly, "a detective's here to speak with you." A tall man stepped forward into the light. "Mr. Whitaker, I'm Detective Ambrose. I've reviewed Officer Parker's report and need to ask you a few questions." Jonas gave a quiet nod. "Okay. Please," Ambrose said, motioning to the chairs nearby. "Have a seat." "Would you like something to drink?" "No, thank you, sir." Jonas declined with a small shake of his head. "I won't take much of your time, but I should warn you, some of these questions might feel invasive, even painful." "I get it," Jonas replied softly, his voice edged with fatigue. "I'll answer whatever I can." "Good. Then let's not go over what's already in the file. Instead, tell me, when was the last time you saw your wife?" "Wednesday morning, sometime around 7:30, maybe a bit later. I kissed her goodbye before I left for work. She had plans to go in too, but—" He faltered. "She never made it." "How were things between you? Any recent disagreements? Anything that seemed off with her?" "Nothing at all. Everything felt normal." Jonas rubbed his eyes, trying to focus. "Tuesday night was just like any other. We had dinner with the kids, watched a little TV, chatted for a bit. She didn't seem upset or distracted. We haven't had a serious argument in months. And your marriage itself? The next question landed heavily. Was everything steady, even in private? Jonas's posture stiffened, clearly uncomfortable, but he answered, "Yes. Tuesday night we were together. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary." He hesitated. "I can't think of a single thing that was different about that night, or about our lives lately." "Did your wife have any close friends? Anyone who might have insight into her state of mind? Any men she confided in?" "I can give you a list of our friends and her co-workers. But no, I don't think there were any men she was especially close to. Sure, she worked with some, but there was never anything more. Her boss, Barbara Ross, is probably her closest friend at work, and Linda Waters. They've been inseparable since college. I'll get you their contact information." "Just to clarify," the investigator pressed gently, "you don't believe she was seeing anyone else?" Jonas's expression hardened with disbelief. "Absolutely not. That's not who she is. She would never betray me like that." "Have you looked into your financials? Checked your accounts, bank statements, or personal belongings? People sometimes take money or keepsakes when they leave." "I hadn't even thought about that," Jonas admitted, eyebrows raised. "But I'll look into it. I'll pull up our checking and savings records and credit card statements. We only use one. We don't have any safe deposit boxes, investments, or anything like that." The next question came with quiet caution. "Mr. Whitaker, do you love your wife?" Jonas froze, caught off guard by the simplicity of the question. Was there a deeper implication? A hidden motive? "Of course I love her," he said at last, his voice cracking. "I'm falling apart here. I don't know where she is. No one seems to understand. She could be out there lost, confused, or worse, someone could have taken her. I love her. I just want her to come home." "There's something else I have to ask," the investigator said, his tone apologetic. "Have you always been faithful to her?" Jonas blinked, visibly stunned. "Yes, without question. Why would you even ask that? I love her. I'd never hurt her, or our kids. That idea is ridiculous." "I'm sorry. We have to look at everything. Can you confirm where you were on Wednesday?" "I was at work all day. There are at least 20 people who can verify that. Feel free to talk to any of them." "And what about Tuesday evening? You mentioned dinner, conversation, TV, and being together. Were the children around?" "They were in bed, asleep in their rooms." "How old are they?" "Julian is 5, Bianca is 3. So no one else can confirm you and your wife were home that evening?" Jonas's brow furrowed. "Number why? What are you suggesting?" "I'm just trying to understand the timeline," the investigator said calmly, "particularly from Tuesday night up to when her car was located outside her workplace." "Just one more question. Is there any reason you can think of, anything at all, that might explain why she would leave without telling you? Not even a word to you or the kids?" Jonas's eyes began to shine with unshed tears. "I've asked myself that over and over, but no, she would never leave our children behind. She loves them more than anything. Being away from them would destroy her. So if she's not here, then she's not choosing this. Something's stopping her. Someone has her. She's being kept from us. Please, you have to find her. I can't bear the thought of what might happen if you don't." His voice broke as emotion overtook him. "Please, just bring her back." "We'll do everything in our power, Mr. Whitaker," the investigator assured him. "For now, gather those contacts and any recent financial documents. Send them over as soon as you can. That'll be all for now." "Thanks for your help. I'll let you know as soon as there's any development. Take care, sir." Jonas didn't move. He stood paralyzed as the detective disappeared down the sidewalk. His nerves were so shattered that he couldn't even glance back at the spot along the fence where he'd just been fixated. The moment the officer was out of sight, Jonas rushed to his car and sped off toward the bank. He was desperate to gather any piece of financial data that might push the investigation forward. After handing the files over to the police, he resumed his desperate search for Annalise. He drove without purpose or direction, scanning every street, lot, and alleyway, hoping she might somehow appear. By the time he pulled back into his driveway, the sun was already sinking. It was July. A month and a half had passed since Annalise had disappeared without explanation, leaving behind not even a hint of her whereabouts. The Whitaker home was buried in an oppressive quiet that refused to lift. Jonas functioned like a shadow of himself. His mother had to remind him of the most basic routines: when to eat, when to bathe, when to show up for work. None of it registered. His world felt empty, gutted by her absence. Annalise was still gone without a trace. The investigation had hit a wall. There were no real leads, no breakthroughs, not even scraps of useful evidence. Authorities hadn't found any unidentified bodies anywhere, not in the state or beyond, which was a tiny relief. But aside from that, there was only a void. Her car had been impounded, thoroughly inspected, but it offered no insight. Their house had been turned inside out by investigators, with nothing unusual uncovered. No strange financial activity, no valuables unaccounted for. The detectives questioned everyone: friends, neighbors, co-workers, congregation members, and clerks from local stores. Her picture was posted in diners, motels, and roadside stations. But after hundreds of hours and countless conversations, the result was the same: nothing, utterly nothing. Even the police admitted they were mystified. It was as if Annalise had simply ceased to exist. One moment, she had been part of Jonas's life. The next, she was nowhere. By Independence Day, Jonas's siblings had arrived with their families, hoping their presence might offer some sort of balm. It didn't. That night, someone, clearly lacking tact or awareness, asked Jonas if it had occurred to him that Annalise might have left him for someone else. The suggestion ignited a firestorm. Jonas erupted, his fury loud and violent, like explosions in a summer sky. The outburst escalated until he swung at his brother, forcing 3 relatives to drag him back inside. Even then, his shouting didn't stop. He cursed and screamed until his mother pushed through the crowd and stepped in front of him. He screamed at her too, until she wrapped him in her arms and refused to let go. That single act broke through his rage, and he collapsed in tears. One by one, the others stepped away, leaving just the 2 of them, mother and son, holding on to each other in the midst of their sorrow. What tortured Jonas most wasn't pain, but the uncertainty. He didn't know whether she was still alive or not. If she had died, at least he would have something, someone to bury. If she had chosen to leave, even for another man, maybe he could eventually make peace with that. But the lack of any answers? That was what gnawed at him. Not knowing was worse than any truth. September rolled in. 4 months had passed since Annalise vanished. The case had grown cold, officially downgraded to a low priority. Her missing person file had been forwarded to the FBI, but there was little expectation of progress. She was gone, and the world moved forward without her. Jonas slogged through his days in a daze. He kept his job, but the spark in him had long since died. He only went grocery shopping when there was nothing left in the house, played with the kids when he had to, and mowed the lawn when the grass couldn't be ignored any longer. Some evenings, he just drove, meandering through side streets and neighborhoods, eyes scanning crowds for any sign of her. Every now and then, he imagined he saw her, but it was never real. She was always someone else. Eventually, Jonas scheduled a session with a therapist. He refused to use the word psychologist. He didn't think of himself as mentally unstable. He was simply mourning someone who had disappeared. The man he met with, Dr. Harper, specialized in helping people process loss, whether it came from death, separation, or in Jonas's case, something in between. For 60 minutes, Jonas poured everything out. Harper sat quietly, scribbling notes, occasionally asking for clarification. Jonas broke down more than once, and each time, the doctor silently offered a box of tissues. When the hour ended, Jonas left feeling numb and drained. Harper remained behind, reviewing the notes, already sketching the beginnings of a plan to guide Jonas toward healing. "How did it go?" his mother asked that evening as he sat down to dinner. "I'm not sure," he replied. "He didn't say much, just let me talk." "That's how it works," she said softly. "He'll help you, but you've got to be patient. You're not going to get through this by yourself." Jonas exhaled. "I just hope the next ones aren't like that. I don't think I've got that much to say." "Then listen," she said with quiet firmness, pushing a plate of food toward him. "Now eat." "Yes, ma'am." December 25th, 1987, a Friday. 7 months had passed. Christmas morning, cheerful for everyone else. For Jonas, it was just another day haunted by Annalise's absence. Sessions with Dr. Harper had become a lifeline for Jonas. Through their time together, he began to recognize that Annalise's vanishing felt indistinguishable from mourning a death. The emotional landscape was the same: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally, acceptance. But unlike death, there was no closure, no physical remains to bury, no gravestone to visit, just scattered fragments of memory slipping through his fingers like smoke. That absence made recovery feel nearly impossible. Jonas was still climbing out from the heavy fog of despair. Acceptance remained elusive. First, he had to face the crushing grief that clung to him like a second skin. Downstairs, the sound of Julian and Bianca unwrapping presents at the crack of dawn pierced the stillness. Their laughter filled the house with joy. Jonas and his mother, groggy and sluggish, made their way down the stairs toward the noise, only to be greeted by delighted shrieks and uncontainable giggles. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Jonas's face broke into a real smile. He paused, quietly observing the toddlers immersed in a sea of shredded wrapping paper beneath the soft glow of the Christmas tree. In that fleeting moment, everything felt untouched by sorrow, whole, complete. But then, the ache of Annalise's absence crept in like a chill, dimming the smile on his lips. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," his mother murmured, holding out a small red box wrapped with care. Jonas took the package with a quiet smile. He reached under the couch, pulling out a modest box of his own. "Thanks, Mom. Here, this one's for you. Merry Christmas." He unwrapped his gift and stared in disbelief. A pristine new camera. He'd never owned anything like it. His old camera had been a basic point-and-shoot, simple and outdated. But this was something else entirely. A Canon EOS Rebel 35mm, complete with lenses, attachments, and rolls of film. "I want you to capture their childhood," his mother said, her voice tender. "I want to look back at their lives through your eyes. I want you to be out there with them, living again, laughing. Let them bring you back. And maybe you can teach me how to use it too. I'd love to take pictures of you with them." Jonas looked at the camera, awestruck. It wasn't just a present, it was a call back to life, a thread connecting him to his children and, perhaps, to his own healing. For the first time in so long, he felt something stir inside him, something like hope. "Open yours," he said, passing her his gift. She peeled back the paper to reveal a delicate gold bracelet, each charm engraved with a letter spelling, "Thank you for everything. Love." 7 small charms dangled from the chain, one for each of her children. Tears sprang to her eyes as she smiled with more light than Jonas had seen in her in years. When Bianca reached out for the gleaming bracelet with a giggle, she quickly clasped it onto her wrist and held it tight. It was hers now, and it meant everything. Her son was slowly emerging from a darkness so deep she hadn't been sure he'd ever return. "Thank you, Lord," she prayed in silence. While the children became engrossed in their new toys and she headed to the kitchen to start breakfast, Jonas quietly retreated to his room and closed the door behind him. At his desk, he began flipping through a pile of old newspapers when a soft knock interrupted his thoughts. His mother stepped inside, eyes landing on the stack before turning to him. I'm not nosy, she said gently, but I do clean up around here. I know what that is. It's your will. Jonas remained silent. She continued, her voice trembling but steady. I'm not sorry for reading it. It's responsible, thinking ahead for Julian and Bianca. But I also found the note you tossed, the one that says more than just planning. It says you're thinking of ending things. Her words hit like a blow. She stepped closer. Don't brush me off as just some old woman who doesn't understand. I do understand. If you believe your children would be better without you, you're wrong. They've already lost one parent. Don't let them lose the other. Imagine what that would do to them. To all of us. Don't do this. Please. Jonas dropped his gaze in shame. She was right. He had convinced himself that vanishing would fix everything. He knew now it wouldn't. Quietly, he made a promise to himself to bring it up with Dr. Harper. After the holidays. Breakfast's ready, his mother said softly, then turned and walked out. May 20th, 1988, Friday. Jonas? What are you doing here? Barbara Ross's voice wavered as her hand came to rest gently on his shoulder. They stood together in the parking lot outside the office where Annalise had once worked, frozen in time, untouched since that day. A full year had passed since she disappeared. 12 relentless months of anguish, torment, and haunting silence. The worst part hadn't been bearing his own sorrow. It had been having to look into his children's eyes and explain that their mother wouldn't be coming home. When they'd asked if she was in heaven, he hadn't had an answer. He hadn't been able to say a word. All he could do was hold them and weep. I don't know where else to go, Jonas said softly, voice breaking under the weight of grief. When someone dies, there's a place to go, a grave, a headstone. You can lay flowers, say goodbye. But when someone just vanishes, there's nothing. No sign, no goodbye, no peace. He glanced around the empty lot. This was the last place she was seen, 1 year ago today. So I came back. I have no one else to turn to. Jonas stood frozen in place, his posture sagging, hands stuffed deep into his coat pockets. Tears traced clean lines down his cheeks, unhidden. He nudged a small stone on the sidewalk with his shoe, as though the motion might pull his focus from the aching void expanding in his chest. A year had slipped by, but the sorrow still pierced him, raw and unrelenting, like the first day all over again. Barb approached without a word and gently draped an arm around his shoulders. Let's go inside, she murmured. I'll make coffee. Maybe Harry's got a little something to spike it with. We'll toast him, together. Their fingers found each other, and they crossed the empty lot toward a modest office building. Behind them, the pavement glistened with a faint, broken trail of tears. Chapter 2, Shadows. The remnants of our past that echo into the now are not separate from this moment. They are this moment. To face them clearly is to change them, and in changing them, we change what has been. Thich Nhat Hanh, Melanie 25, 2011, Saturday. With the power vested in me by God and the state, I now declare you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Jocelyn and Tom's lips met, sealing their union as Mr. and Mrs. Langford. To the left of the altar, her sisters Bianca and Rachel beamed, while her brothers, Julian and Reed, stood to the right. Tom's siblings, 2 brothers and 2 sisters, completed the procession of bridesmaids and groomsmen stretching across the stage. The ceremony unfolded seamlessly. It all felt so light, so easy, so flawlessly beautiful. Melanie held tightly to Jonas's hand as the newlyweds exited, her eyes locked on their daughter's beaming face. Jocelyn glanced back and caught her mother's tearful smile, offering a playful wink. Melanie's tears betrayed her pride, just as Jonas's silent grin revealed his joy. Jocelyn had never been happier. She had no idea what was stirring beneath the surface for her parents. The reception was lavish, a glowing celebration filled with exquisite food, thundering music, and an endless parade of compliments. Guests took every opportunity to praise Jonas and Melanie for raising such an extraordinary daughter. Jonas's smile never faded. He looked every bit the glowing father of the bride. Yet Melanie stayed close, always keeping him within arm's reach, as if tethered by worry. Later that night, when only the most committed partiers remained dancing under dim lights and empty glasses, Jonas and Melanie slipped away. They made their way through the kitchen and out into the quiet, where a picnic table rested beneath a canopy of trees. Melanie eased down onto the bench and leaned her head against Jonas's shoulder. "That was the most stunning wedding I've ever seen," she whispered, her voice low, meant only for him. "And we cleaned up pretty well ourselves. We smiled through the whole thing. No one had a clue. How are you holding together?" Jonas chuckled, a tired sound. "My face actually hurts. I don't think I've ever faked a smile for that long, but for her, I would have stapled it on." 4 married, 1 still under our roof. What's that now? Just Rachel left. Once she moves out, we're finally free to chase that second honeymoon. Italy, gondolas, ancient cathedrals, way too much pasta and wine. Just you and me, holed up in a villa, making love like we're 20 again. Jonas's laughter faded into a quiet sigh. That sounds perfect. The wind stirred softly through the trees above them. For a moment, time seemed suspended, a breath held before something shifts. They both felt it, like the electricity that builds before a storm. But for now, tonight was about love, about beginnings, about celebration. "Jonas," Melanie said after a pause, "do you ever think about our own wedding?" "Anytime I need to remember what joy feels like," he replied. "That day, marrying you, it made everything right again." "Did you ever question it?" "Not once. I knew the moment I saw you. You took some persuading, but I never had a single doubt." She smiled at the memory. "Thank God for Cliff and Willow. If they hadn't thrown that barbecue—" "I almost skipped it," Jonas said, shaking his head. "I thought I was just the poor widower with kids they pitied. Didn't realize they were matchmaking." "They told me the same." Melanie laughed quietly. "Said you'd understand loss, and that maybe you'd help me move forward. And when you dribbled barbecue sauce down your front, I knew they were right." Jonas looked at her with soft, unwavering eyes. Melanie mouthed the words she'd said 1,000 times. "I love you too." Silence surrounded them, comforting, still, complete. "Melanie?" "Yes?" "Mrs. Whitaker? This is Officer Pellegrino with the county police. We have new developments regarding Annalise Whitaker. If you and your husband are able to come to the station, we'd like to speak with you. We'll be here until 6. Do you think you can arrive by 5? "I'll double-check with my husband and let you know, but we're planning to be there around 5, she said. "If you don't hear from us beforehand, just wait there. We'll come to you." "That sounds fine," came the reply. "Also, just so you're aware, the Seattle Police Department is quite eager to talk to Mr. Whitaker. See you at 5. At exactly 5 p.m., Jonas and Melanie arrived at the South Side precinct, their fingers intertwined in a firm grip. Detective Scanlon met them at the entrance and guided them up to a second-floor conference room, where Officer Pellegrino was already seated, sifting through a stack of documents. Scanlon began the meeting with a courteous nod, acknowledging their promptness. "Mr. Whitaker, we've received some recent developments concerning your former wife," Scanlon said in a calm, respectful tone. "We realize this might be distressing. Please feel free to step outside or take a break at any point. Before we begin, would either of you care for something to drink, water or soda?" He paused, then added with a half-smile, "I'd recommend skipping the coffee." "A diet soda would be great if you have it," Melanie answered, speaking on behalf of them both. With refreshments distributed, Officer Pellegrino took the lead. "Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker, here's what we've gathered so far. A detailed report just came in from Seattle concerning Christina Monroe, previously known to you as Annalise Whitaker. As was mentioned earlier, she's currently being held in connection to the death of her husband. Mrs. Monroe was married to Thomas J. Monroe, a long-distance trucker living in Cottage Lake, just outside Seattle. Tragically, Mr. Monroe died last week when an acetylene tank exploded while he was welding his truck. The cause of the explosion appears to involve tampering with the valve, possibly deliberate. Forensics and the medical examiner are still running tests, but in the meantime, she has been detained. During the course of the investigation, her fingerprints matched those of a man declared missing in Baltimore in 1987, your ex-wife. That discovery led to an unexpected turn. Digging deeper, authorities found she had also been married in California and Arizona, 2 other times. In both cases, her husbands died under circumstances that raised eyebrows. Given this pattern, she's now officially designated a fugitive, pending further inquiry. Although no formal charges have been filed yet, investigators are paying very close attention to her role in these deaths. Currently, Mrs. Monroe works at a travel agency near her residence. Financial reviews show that she has accumulated considerable wealth, mainly from selling off businesses she inherited from her deceased spouses. Seattle police are reconstructing her timeline from the moment she vanished from Baltimore to her reappearance in Washington. Thanks to digital footprints, retracing her steps should be manageable, and they've promised to keep us updated as their findings are organized. Detective Scanlon briefly interjected, his tone softening. Are you both doing all right? Would you like a moment to yourselves? Throughout the exchange, Melanie had kept a firm grasp on Jonas's hand. Though his grip was firm, she could tell he was staying composed. I'm all right for now, she responded, her voice steady. Very well, let's continue, Pellegrino said. The majority of her assets seemed to originate from those earlier inheritances. After each husband's passing, she sold off their enterprises. We've confirmed that aside from the children she left with you, there are no other offspring. Investigators couldn't locate any living relatives by blood, so we shared with the Seattle authorities the list of friends and family you gave us back in '87. Oddly, she never once attracted police attention or suspicion in any of the places she lived. She managed to maintain a spotless reputation over the last 24 years, and her passport shows a great deal of international travel. Clearly, she's been all over the globe. One final detail. They've sent over a recent composite sketch if you're interested in seeing it. Jonas immediately lifted his hand, shaking his head. No, that won't be necessary. Understood, Pellegrino said with a nod. That's the extent of what we currently know. The Seattle department is eager to speak with you directly, and they have your contact info. They might reach out soon. This morning, we forwarded them the complete file from the original missing persons report. Hopefully it assists them. Any questions before we conclude? Melanie turned toward Jonas, who gave a slight shake of his head. No, we're good, she replied, looking back at the officers. Thank you both. If there's anything else, don't hesitate to reach out. Stepping out of the precinct, the warm summer breeze greeted them, a stark contrast to the cold, clinical atmosphere inside. Jonas loosened his grip on Melanie's hand as they walked to their car. It wasn't as bad as you thought it might be, was it? Melanie asked gently. Jonas took a moment before answering. No, it really wasn't. Honestly, I didn't know what to expect, and I was nervous about what they might tell us, but in the end, it wasn't as overwhelming as I feared. Thank you for being there. The drive back was quiet and contemplative. Once home, Jonas entered through the back door, setting his briefcase on the kitchen table. The sound made Melanie jump slightly. She hurried in with a startled look. Goodness, you gave me a scare. I didn't recognize that noise right away, she said, her voice light. She stepped closer and placed a warm, brief kiss on his cheek. Did you speak with them? She leaned into him, her body pressing closely against his. Yes, he murmured. And then? What was their response? They asked a ton of questions, stuff already covered in the report. After that, they said they wanted me to fly out and meet her face to face. And what did you tell them? I said I needed time to think it over. I don't want to do it, but I might not have a choice. If you do decide to go, just remember, I'll be with you through it all. July. Outside the precinct on Decatur Street, Jonas and Melanie hovered at the entrance, hesitation etched into every movement. Anxious energy buzzed between them. They both knew what they were walking into. A chapter of Jonas's life that had long been buried but never forgotten. A young cadet in uniform appeared, pushing open the glass door. "Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker, welcome to Seattle. Please come with me. I'll take you to the conference room." Their steps were unsteady as they followed her through a narrow hallway. "Wait here," she said before slipping into a room and shutting the door behind her. Muted voices filtered through from the other side. A man's voice first, deep and steady, then a woman's, sharper, higher pitched. The conversation escalated quickly, tension leaking through the walls. Suddenly the door was flung open. Jonas's eyes fell on Annalise for the first time in over 20 years. She was standing at a table, leaning over it with both hands pressed down, shouting at a uniformed officer across from her. She looked older now, a bit heavier perhaps, but unmistakably the same Annalise. "I've changed my mind," she screamed. "I don't want to see him. Not now, not ever. How many times do I have to say it?" Jonas froze in place, stunned. He just stood there in the hallway, staring at her. Then she turned and their eyes met. In that instant, everything seemed to stop. No one moved. No one said a word. They simply stared at each other, digging through memories untouched for nearly 25 years. At last, Annalise straightened and said softly, "Close the door." The door shut with a hard click, cutting off the fragile hope Jonas had felt rising. "Number no," he cried out, staring at the wood between them. "You don't get to do this again." He lunged at the door, pounding it with his fists and kicking wildly. "You can't just disappear again," he roared. Melanie rushed to him, wrapping her arms around his shoulders, trying desperately to calm him, to bring him back to reality. But he wasn't listening. He couldn't. He was lost to everything but that door. Two officers appeared from the corridor, rushing forward. They tackled him to the ground as he kicked and screamed. "You don't get to do this to me again," he howled. Eventually, the fight left his body. The officers dragged him down the hall into another room. Melanie stayed close, tears streaking her cheeks as she watched him break apart in front of her. An hour passed before any sense of calm returned. Apologies were exchanged. The officers apologized, saying they'd mistaken him for an aggressor. Jonas apologized too, for his outburst, for shoving Melanie away when she tried to help, and for losing control. "I'm sorry," he said, his eyes raw with remorse. "I lost it. I pushed you away when I should have leaned on you. Please forgive me. I love you. I swear I'll never let something like that happen again." Melanie still looked at him with love in her eyes, though it was dimmed by hurt. "Can we just go home?" she whispered. Chapter 3. Rebirth. Every night I die, and every morning I am reborn. Mahatma Gandhi. September. Melanie opened the front door and her breath caught. Annalise stood outside. "Hello," she said flatly. "I'm here to see Jonas." Melanie's hand clenched tighter around the doorknob. Her tongue felt heavy in her mouth. Annalise, the very person who had brought so much pain, was now standing just feet away, only a thin wooden door separating them. Images of Jonas's breakdown in Seattle flashed in Melanie's mind. Countless biting words rose to her lips. "He's not here," Melanie said coldly. "He went shopping with his daughter." "What do you want?" she asked. "Why are you here now?" "I need to talk to him," Annalise replied, her tone even. "Seattle caught me off guard. I think we need to resolve some things." "Well, he's not going to be back anytime soon," Melanie said, her voice like ice. "Leave your contact information. If he's interested, he'll reach out." I don't have a number right now," Annalise said awkwardly. "I'm traveling. I'm not reachable by phone where I'm staying. Would it be all right if I waited inside? I promise not to bother you. I'll just sit and wait quietly." Melanie hesitated, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "Please," Annalise added, her voice softening. "You won't even know I'm here." Melanie went over every imaginable scenario that could make opening the door a terrible decision, but none of them felt concrete enough to hold her back. The idea that Jonas might miss his chance to finally find the truth he'd waited so long for was unbearable. Still, giving him that opportunity could stir up problems she wasn't sure she could handle. After a moment of internal debate, she made up her mind. "Come in," she said softly. Without exchanging another word, Melanie led her into the living room, Annalise following hesitantly, as if the house were foreign. But of course, it wasn't. Not entirely. She had once called this place home, 24 years ago, when she and Jonas had shared it with their children. "You can wait here. I need to check on the oven," Melanie said, veering toward the kitchen. Annalise gave a brief nod, slipped off her coat, and looked around. The space felt unfamiliar. The green walls she remembered had been replaced, and the once grubby beige carpet was long gone. Nothing looked as it had in her mind's eye. Only one object tugged at her memory, an antique microscope resting on a shelf behind the sofa. She and Jonas had found it at a flea market shortly after their wedding, a symbol of their shared love for quirky weekend finds and vintage curios to decorate their first place together. Those leisurely outings disappeared from their lives once the kids came along. Her gaze drifted to the shelves nearby, where she noticed a 35mm camera enclosed in a glass box beside a lineup of photo albums, each labeled by year, beginning in 1990 and concluding in early 2008. A modern Canon digital camera sat casually on top. Annalise approached the fireplace and stared up at the large family portrait that hung above it, the kind of picture arranged in a studio, everyone barefoot and dressed in white, smiling as if caught in a spontaneous moment of joy in a sunny meadow. 6 cheerful faces beamed back at her, all strangers, except for Jonas. He looked at ease, his fingers woven naturally through his wife's, the kind of easy affection that spoke of years of deep companionship. Annalise remembered what that had felt like. Their connection had once been just as strong, something she'd searched for in every relationship since, yet never truly found again. Nothing had ever measured up. Nothing ever would. "That's Julian and Bianca on the left," came Melanie's voice from the doorway. "Reed and Jocelyn on the right, my kids from my first marriage. And the little one in the center is Rachel. She's much taller these days." Melanie stepped in carrying 2 steaming mugs of tea. "They're out shopping now, Jonas and Rachel. I'm not supposed to know, but I think they're hunting for a birthday present for me." She handed Annalise a cup. "It's safe, no poison, I promise." Annalise smiled faintly as she accepted the drink. Melanie's tone softened. "I'd never do anything to hurt Jonas," she said. Annalise turned her eyes back to the portrait, her voice quiet, tinged with nostalgia. "They've all grown so much. Julian's a mirror of his father, and Bianca, she has my eyes. I didn't know what seeing them again would do to me." She hesitated, trying to sort through the emotions that bubbled up. "I didn't know what to expect, but I do feel something. I just don't know how to describe it. Jonas clearly did a good job raising them, and you helped. Are they kind? Are they good people?" "They're amazing," Melanie said. "Julian's married now. He and his wife both serve in the Marines. Bianca's teaching. She has a daughter and another baby on the way." They both fell into silence again, sipping from their cups. The tension between them hadn't vanished, but the edge had worn down. The quiet that filled the room now felt more like a wary truce than open hostility. Each woman observed the other, silently weighing the presence across from her, a figure from the past now sitting in the present. Melanie took in Annalise's appearance, tall, likely in her early 50s, chestnut hair pulled neatly into a ponytail that rested down her back. She wore tailored jeans and a thick ski sweater in bold colors, the sort of expensive item you'd find in a boutique catering to upscale tourists. Her cowboy boots were chic, her silver jewelry distinctive and southwestern in style. Her face carried no makeup, and it needed none. Her features were defined, her blue eyes still vivid and penetrating. Annalise's assessment of Melanie was of a different nature entirely. Here sat the woman she had once feared becoming, a stay-at-home wife in her 40s, dressed in casual slacks and a college sweatshirt, an apron tied at her waist. Her blonde hair fell in gentle waves, framing her face with a kind of effortless beauty. Her violet eyes were rare and captivating. Her sneakers were worn, but her skin glowed, naturally smooth and seemingly untouched by cosmetic effort. "How long have you and Jonas been married?" Annalise asked. 15 years, Melanie replied. "And Rachel is your only child together?" "Yes, she's our everything. I remember Jonas used to talk about wanting a big family, 12 kids if he could," Annalise said with a distant smile. Melanie responded gently. "Come sit. If we're going to talk, we should at least be comfortable." They settled into their seats, Annalise lounging slightly on the chaise, Melanie choosing the couch opposite her. The coffee table stood between them, a quiet buffer. Melanie continued, "When we married, I already had 2 children. Jonas adopted them. Then Rachel came along. He brought up the idea of another once or twice, but we agreed 5 was plenty. That was that. The 12-kid dream was more of a joke." They paused once more, both sipping their tea in quiet thought. The atmosphere remained careful, but it had softened. With each word, each breath, the air grew less heavy. Annalise finally looked up, her voice curious but restrained. "Do you know everything about me?" Melanie took a moment before answering, then chose truth over tact. "I do. Jonas told me everything. You never actually wanted kids, did you?" "Number I didn't." "I'm shocked. I had no clue. And if I didn't, there's no way Jonas could have known either. So why go through with marriage if children weren't part of the plan?" "You ended up having 2. Why follow through with it?" Annalise glanced down at the glass she held, her grip subtly tightening. "I loved Jonas," she murmured. "We shared so much laughter. I believed we could chase the life I'd always envisioned, traveling across continents, seeing the wonders of the world, hiking up mountains, racing through open roads on motorcycles, kissing at the top of the Eiffel Tower, exploring ancient ruins. That was the dream I'd held on to since I was a girl. But once I found out I was pregnant with Julian, Jonas's whole perspective changed. He jumped headfirst into family life, house hunting, painting nurseries, researching the best schools. Everything shifted toward the mundane. And that's when it hit me. Our adventurous life wasn't going to happen. Instead, we'd be tied to routines, bills, responsibilities, no wild travels, no Eiffel Tower, just feedings and school runs. And not long after, I was pregnant again, with Bianca. Jonas lit up like he'd hit the jackpot, but all I could think was, I'm trapped. I'm becoming someone who only exists to care for children. I kept imagining a house overflowing with kids, endless noise, no silence, no freedom, and I was suffocating in that picture. Did you ever tell Jonas any of this? We talked in ways, but he was so happy. He adored being a dad. I didn't have the heart to crush that. I could never say it clearly, not like this. So he didn't know you didn't want more kids? I dropped hints, small ones. But no, I don't think he ever really understood. I couldn't bring myself to be direct. So instead of telling him you just left? You really think that didn't devastate him? It wasn't like that. Hurting him was never my intention. I had my own dreams too. Dreams that felt like they died the moment I became a mother. I wanted to live while I was still young enough to feel alive. Jonas wouldn't have left. He was rooted. The kids needed him. So the only way I saw to reclaim my life was to go. Did you even try to explain any of that to him? Not in any real way, but he could see I wasn't happy. He had to know something was off. Seriously? You expected him to just guess what you were feeling? That he'd just know? How could you be so blind? He didn't see it coming at all. He adored you. He lived for those kids. He was clueless, Melanie snapped. She leaned forward, her eyes narrow and sharp. Annalise stayed still, gaze lowered, watching the tea swirl in her cup. Melanie could feel the rage rising in her chest. Her hands clenched before she forced herself to lean back, taking a long breath through her nose, trying to cool the fire building inside her. It was some time before she spoke again. "Answer me this," Melanie finally said. How did you manage to disappear so thoroughly? Even the police had no leads. A faint smile tugged at Annalise's lips, half smirk, half shrug. Honestly, it wasn't that complicated. I worked for a company that handled estate cleanouts, sorting through the lives of people who'd passed away. Boxes full of furniture, letters, photos. Most families don't want the burden, so we dealt with it. While clearing out one estate, I found a birth certificate. It belonged to a woman just a few years younger than me. I asked her family about her. Turned out she was severely disabled, physically and mentally, fully dependent. She'd never live on her own. Her name was Christina Barnett. That was my opening. I used her birth certificate to get a driver's license. From there, I applied for a social security number, got a credit card, bought a used car in her name. I also had bonds my mother left me. No one else knew about them. That money gave me the means to start over. When I arrived at Christina's, I became Christina Barnett. You talk like it was a simple errand, Melanie said, disbelief etched in her voice. But this was clearly meticulous. It must have taken you weeks, months. You didn't just get up one day and leave, you orchestrated it. You really didn't understand what you were walking away from, did you? I did, Annalise said, her voice steady. I thought about it a lot. But Jonas was a wonderful dad. I knew he'd step up. The kids would be fine with him. Sure, he'd grieve, but eventually he'd move on. And from the sound of it, I'd say he has. Melanie sat frozen, stunned by the chill in Annalise's words. She stared, speechless, her expression hardening into disbelief and rage. Her brow furrowed, her lips pressed into a tight line. When she spoke, her voice was low, sharp as a blade. Hold on. Something's not adding up, she said slowly. Who exactly is Christina? Oh, guess I skipped over that, Annalise said with a careless tone. Christina was someone I met on another estate job. We got close sorting through his aunt's things. He lived in Texas. When I left, I went straight to him. And just how close did the two of you get? Let's not kid ourselves. It was never just a friendship. Don't give me that. You're going to lay it all out, every detail about you and Christina, or I swear I'll drag it from you piece by piece. Fine, save the threats. It was years ago, and whatever you think you'll uncover now won't change anything. Christina and I were romantically involved for a while before I left town. We'd meet a couple of times a month, usually at that Holiday Inn out in Ellicott City. It was light, playful. He'd talk about taking me away, showing me the world, mountain treks, exotic islands, Fiji. The plan was always the same. Once I left Jonas, we'd finally be together. Around then, I stumbled across Christina's birth certificate. A few months later, I packed up and headed for Texas, chasing Christina. But he wasn't exactly free. He had a wife, a whole family. So I kept moving, ended up in Phoenix. So you walked out on Jonas? That's one way to look at it. Truth is, I'd already made up my mind to leave. Christina just gave me a reason and a destination. It didn't pan out like I imagined, but by then, going back wasn't even a consideration. You never thought about returning? Sure, I felt guilty. Leaving the kids with Jonas wasn't easy, but I knew he could handle it. He was steady, dependable. I told myself he'd manage. I'd get hit with waves of guilt now and then, yeah, but I'd made my choice. I wouldn't let regret pull me backward. Eventually, I married a man who owned a motorcycle shop in Phoenix. We rode all over, through the Southwest, into Mexico, even north into Canada. He died in Texas, wrecked his Harley. An armadillo ran out, he lost control, got thrown into traffic. After that, I sold the shop and moved to Sacramento. A few years later, I married again, a man who owned a vineyard in Napa. He taught me everything about wine. We traveled through Asia, the Pacific Islands, even up to Alaska, promoting his wine label. Then came the diagnosis, an aggressive form of cancer. When things got unbearable, he took his own life. We'd been together 8 years. After he passed, I sold the vineyard and moved to Seattle, where I met Tom. He drove long-haul routes, and I often rode along. Things were good, until one day a welding tank exploded right in front of him. Afterward, the cops started asking questions. thought maybe I was some kind of black widow, too many husbands, too many accidents. It was a mess of paperwork and suspicion, and that's when they figured out who I really was. That's how they found Jonas. At first, I didn't want anything to do with him, but the pressure kept building, and eventually I agreed to meet. But when I heard he was just beyond the door, I panicked, said I'd changed my mind. I remember the shouting as I walked away. The door slammed behind me. I wish I hadn't done that to him. I still don't understand what he screamed or why he lost it. Melanie was simmering. Her face remained composed, jaw tight, eyes cold, but inside she was a storm of fury. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. This woman, who'd once been married to the man Melanie loved more than anything, spoke about romance like it was a buffet. Sample, enjoy, discard, move on. Melanie's mind spun. Her anger was blinding, overwhelming. All she could manage was, "So I take it Paris didn't work out for you?" Her voice laced with sharp sarcasm. "Oh, I made it to Paris, went with Gordon. Or was it Gary?" she said, waving dismissively. "Just a friend. Fiji was with Elroy. Egypt? Some guy? I've forgotten his name. I've been around, seen a lot, though not as much as I once dreamed. I still want to see it all before I'm done. The one place that stayed with me? A tiny hill town near Florence, San Gimignano. I spent a month there with Pablo. And now? That's where I'm heading. My flight from New York to Florence leaves in 2 days. I'm hoping to find a little villa in Tuscany and settle there. After that, who knows?" "You really were just a whore, weren't you?" Melanie spat. "How many men did you sleep with before your marriage even ended?" "I never looked at another man until Christina," she replied softly. "I was loyal to Jonas. I was a good wife." But Melanie's rage hadn't cooled. It was flaring hotter, sharper. She felt as though she could crush steel in her hands. Had there been a knife or a gun within reach, the conversation might have ended differently. But the room was bare. Instead, something inside her snapped into clarity. A new plan took root. "Pardon me," she said, her voice suddenly calm. "Let me grab us something else to drink." In the kitchen, she carried their cups. A brief, wild impulse told her to hurl Annalise's cup through the window, but the glass had been boarded up months ago. Jonas always said he'd get around to fixing it. He never did. She placed the cups in the sink and fetched 2 fresh ones. She returned with new tea and sat gracefully back down on the couch, offering a faint smile. "You've told me about your life since you left Baltimore," Melanie said evenly. "So now, I'll tell you what happened here after you disappeared. I'll start with the day you vanished. It was a Wednesday, May 20th to be precise. The babysitter got nervous when you didn't show up for Julian and Bianca, so she called Jonas. He rushed over and picked them up. He stayed up all night waiting for you. But you never came home. He called everyone he could think of. No one had seen you. Not that day. Not at all. They found your car abandoned in the parking lot outside your office, with no indication of where you might have gone. It was as though you had simply evaporated. Alarmed by your abrupt disappearance, your co-workers began searching for you. Jonas scoured the city in a growing panic, and when his worry spiraled into hopelessness, he contacted the police. In those early days, he was gripped by terror. He couldn't stop imagining you, injured, stranded somewhere, unable to call for help. His thoughts darkened. He began to fear someone had taken you, though no theory made any real sense. Local news outlets picked up the story and, ominously, implied that Jonas might be responsible, that he had hurt you and hidden the evidence. That suspicion lingered with investigators, at least temporarily. Jonas's mother moved in to help with the children and offer him whatever support she could. But what he truly needed was you. And you were nowhere to be found. Later, Jonas would describe your disappearance as being like a snowflake swept away on the breeze. He eventually returned to work, trying to rebuild a normal rhythm, but he was no longer the same man. On weekends, he drove through isolated stretches of countryside, called every mutual acquaintance, contacted police departments across Maryland, and placed newspaper ads pleading for any information. Nothing surfaced. No leads, no clues, just silence. Christmas that year was unbearable for him. By then, he had started therapy, but the sessions barely dented the depth of his despair. His depression became overwhelming. At one point, he began making plans to end his life. Fortunately, his mother noticed the signs and intervened before he could follow through. It's important to say this. She never spoke a single harsh word about you. Both she and Jonas held on to the hope that one day you might return. Jonas often swore he saw you in crowds, in passing cars on street corners. Eventually, he stopped searching. Everyone who could help had already tried, but you never came back. Jonas began to feel like a shadow of himself. He had to sit Julian and Bianca down and gently explain that you were gone, and might never return. They asked if you were in heaven. Jonas told them he didn't know. He just couldn't say. He urged them to keep hoping, to pray that you'd come home. But you didn't. On May 20th, a year to the day after you vanished, Jonas's former supervisor Barbara discovered him in the company parking lot, crying uncontrollably and muttering to himself. He was confused, barely able to speak. She guided him indoors, offered him a drink, tried to calm him, but he collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. He kept repeating, "Please don't leave me." Nothing she said could soothe him. Eventually, someone called emergency services. Jonas was hospitalized in a psychiatric facility, where he stayed for 3 months. The diagnosis was post-traumatic stress disorder, what used to be called a nervous breakdown. Whatever the name, he had completely come undone. Your disappearance broke him. You left in a way that tore his world apart. If your goal had been to devastate him, there couldn't have been a more merciless way to do it. Even if you'd betrayed him or embarrassed him in public, at least there would have been something tangible to grieve. Instead, you disappeared without a word, leaving an aching void in his life. He fell apart. The only ones who stayed by his side were his family and his boss. To most people, it looked like he'd lost his mind. It took him over a year just to regain some balance. He remained in therapy for years afterward. And all that time, he had no clarity, no idea why you left or where you'd gone. It was as if you'd crushed his spirit without ever laying a hand on him. 3 years after you were last seen, someone gently encouraged him to consider divorce, to try and build something new. But he couldn't bring himself to do it. Deep down, he still believed you might return. When the truth finally hit him, it shattered him all over again. It took 7 painful years before he found the courage to start letting go. Filing the legal documents to declare you dead was the hardest thing he'd ever done. The term was in absentia, and while it offered a form of closure in legal terms, the emotional cost nearly destroyed him. His family, his therapist, and his boss stood beside him as he faced the judge and explained his decision. That courtroom held more grief than anyone knew how to bear. The tears that fell that day seemed endless. But he made it through. He learned how to survive. We met at a friend's backyard cookout, almost by accident. I had lost my own husband in a car accident a few years earlier. Jonas was still adrift, hollow from everything he'd endured. We were introduced and left alone to see where the moment might take us. We ended up talking for hours. Gradually, we began spending time together. Nothing serious at first, just simple outings with the kids. Jonas, quiet and gentle and scarred, helped me heal from my own loss. For the first time since my husband's death, I felt something like hope. As our relationship deepened, Jonas told me he wanted to marry me. But only after I knew everything, his full story, the part of his life he rarely spoke about. We rented a cabin by a secluded lake and spent the weekend there. That's when Jonas finally told me everything. Over 2 long, quiet days, he opened his heart. He talked about his collapse, the endless therapy, the hopeless searches, and the heartbreak. He cried more than he spoke. He let it all out, bare and unfiltered, and I listened, my heart breaking for him. But I also felt something else. Rage. At you. I never thought it was possible for someone to be so utterly void of compassion, so icy, so merciless, as to endure what he said had been inflicted upon him. It was almost too horrific to believe. On the third day, we sat together in silence beside the lake, our hands gently laced. Neither of us spoke a word. That quiet moment was when I realized I loved him, and since then, my love has only deepened with time. 12 months later, we were married. A year after that, our daughter Rachel was born. We named her with care. She represented a fresh start, a rebirth of love. Like the flower she was named after, we knew life could bring pain. There would be thorns. But we made a vow. No matter what came, we would face it together, united, until the very end. From the instant Jonas stepped into my life, your absence has haunted me. Your memory, the remnants of your decisions, hovered over our home like a shadow that wouldn't fade. A bitter specter fueled by all the questions you left behind. I can't say how today will end, but I hope, truly hope, that whatever hold you still have on him dissolves at last. Let me make one thing clear. I would never leave him as you did. My love is truer, deeper, more enduring than yours ever was. I'll stand with him for the rest of my life. You almost shattered the gentlest soul I've ever known, just by walking away. Melanie slowly eased back into her chair, her fists finally unclenching. Though her anger still pulsed through her, she had said everything that needed saying. Now, she could only hope the woman sitting across from her had truly heard it, had absorbed the weight of those words. If she hadn't, she never would. In Melanie's eyes, the woman wasn't even human anymore. She was something feral, something wild that needed to be put down. I truly couldn't have foreseen the destruction I'd leave behind. Of course you couldn't. You were blind, self-obsessed. You were chasing a fantasy of liberation, feeding on the thrill of new lovers and imagined freedom. How could you have been so wrapped up in yourself? Silence settled between the two women like a heavy fog. Neither looked away. "Mom? We're home! Where are you?" a voice called from the front door. Rachel stepped into the room and paused, her gaze catching on the unfamiliar woman sitting stiffly on the couch. "Oh, sorry, I didn't know we had company." "Where's your dad?" Melanie asked. "I'm here," Jonas said, appearing behind her. But his words stopped short as his eyes landed on the woman sitting across the room. Her face was downcast, but he recognized her immediately. "Hello, Jonas," she said softly, finally lifting her gaze to meet his. He froze, paralyzed by shock. Melanie turned to Rachel. "Sweetheart, why don't you call Olivia? Show her your new phone, okay? Go ahead." She walked her daughter toward the hallway, then turned back, positioning herself directly in front of Jonas. Her voice was quiet but firm. "Jonas," she said gently, "you need to face this. You're strong, you can handle it, and remember, I'm not going anywhere. I'll be in our room. If you need me, just call. But I believe you've got this. Sit with her. Speak your truth." Jonas met her eyes, and a tear brimmed without falling. She was right. No matter how hard it would be, it had to happen. And knowing she was nearby, always gave him the strength he needed. As Melanie turned back toward the woman on the couch, her expression hardened. Her stare could have pierced through steel. Without another word, she walked out and closed the bedroom door behind her. Hours passed. Near midnight, Melanie spotted headlights sweeping across the front lawn. She watched from the window as Annalise walked briskly down the path and stepped into a waiting cab. The car drove away, and Melanie exhaled, shoulders finally relaxing. Jonas would be right behind her. But time dragged on. An hour slipped by, and a gnawing unease grew inside her. Just as she rose to check on him, the door creaked open. Jonas stepped in, looking utterly hollow, like someone who had just lost something irreplaceable. His eyes were puffy and rimmed red. He didn't say anything. He just moved toward her, sank to his knees, and wrapped his arms around her legs. He rested his head in her lap, releasing a heavy, exhausted breath. She stroked his hair gently as they sat in silence. Neither of them moved. Then Melanie asked, her voice barely above a whisper, "Are you all right?" He lifted his head, eyes still glassy but calmer. "Yeah, I think I am," he murmured. "It wasn't what I expected, but it's over. She's gone. We don't have to worry about her anymore." He paused, inhaling deeply. "It's like I've been dragging this weight behind me for 24 years, and now, finally, it's gone. There's still a lot inside me that needs healing, but I'll get there." Melanie gave him a soft, crooked smile, relieved, but with sadness still clinging to the edges. "Do you want to talk about it?" she asked. "A bit, but not tonight." He shifted beside her, settling into the comfort of her presence. "Tomorrow, I want to see my mom. I want to tell both of you everything, but for now, I'll just say this." He paused again, collecting his thoughts. "I don't know if you and she spoke before we came in, but she told me why she left." He looked at her, disbelief in his expression. "You won't believe it. Do you want to hear it now or wait?" "What did she say?" Melanie asked quietly. "She told me she'd been unfaithful, from almost the very beginning. Not just once, countless times, while she was pregnant, over and over again. She told me I never knew how to please her in bed, that other men understood her desires in ways I simply couldn't grasp. She'd found them all over, at work, during nights out, even once in the produce aisle of a grocery store. After walking out on me, she swore her sheets had never gone cold. She had even married a few of the ones she liked best. The way she spoke about it, you'd think she wore it like a badge of honor. I never saw it coming. Only now do I recognize her for what she truly is. I couldn't have imagined she was capable of becoming that kind of person. How naive I had been, believing I'd married someone decent. What I loved wasn't her. It was the fantasy I'd created around her, the version I needed her to be. I never bothered to look deeper, to see the truth. A woman without remorse, without conscience, utterly devoid of grace. God help me. Did she really say all that? Yes, every word, without a flicker of shame. She actually looked satisfied with herself, smug even. There wasn't an ounce of remorse, no sorrow, not a tear to be found. And what cut the deepest? She didn't say a single word about Julian or Bianca. Not once. How could someone be so heartless, so utterly hollow? I wasted countless hours mourning her, when I should have been focusing on the people who truly mattered. I hate that I ever let her live inside my heart. That will never happen again. It's over now. The past is done. We can finally move forward. I love you, Mr. Whitaker. I've always loved you. I always will. Come to bed. Just hold me tonight." They stood together and embraced, holding on as though they'd just survived a long and brutal separation. There was no need for words. Their bodies, their closeness, spoke everything that mattered. A man and a woman, entirely in sync. Their hearts moved as one. Melanie recalled the lie Annalise had told, the one that gave this man the peace he needed, the fiction that allowed him to let go of old pain and lay his memories to rest. From here on, everything would change. She smiled gently, tightening her arms around him. Jonas murmured, "Tomorrow, on the way to Mom's, let's talk about that second honeymoon I promised you. We've earned it. I'll take a break in the spring, and we'll go somewhere just for us. Sound good?" "That sounds perfect," she said, her voice warm and steady. "But I think I've had my fill of Italy. How would you feel about Tahiti instead?"